between Algiers.
Excuse me, 33 million all over Egypt, not only in Tahrir Street.
33
million in all over Egypt.
That's fine.
Yeah.
33 million all over Egypt. If you look at the demographics
not
of
in
Egypt,
Tahrir Square.
if you look at the demographics of Egypt and you look at the age proportion of the country, you would realize that that would be
we look at it and we know it very well.
Having said that, anyway, just moving on, and I know there was this question to Maha. I just want to say one quick thing about the Constitution and another aspect. In terms of the Constitution, and I think this is hugely important, and it shows the hypocrisy not only in the media but in terms of society, was the front page of Al-Watan newspaper in Egypt, which was one of the main newspapers. Magdi al-Gallad, everyone knows his background, his support for the coup and anything that was anti-Morsi. The front page leading up to the referendum of last year's coup was no to the oppressive constitution. La lil-Dastur al-Istibdadi was the front page, and it had a silhouette of someone cramming in a corner of a cell. Now, according to that constitution, the military, you couldn't have military trials for civilians. According to that constitution, there was no minister that you would require the military's approval to remove or instate. According to that constitution, the freedoms in it are tenfold more than what you find in this. In fact, the constitution was formed indirectly by elected people. So through a parliament that was elected, which then picked 100 people, who then traveled across the country and met with journalist syndicates, artist syndicates, farmer syndicates, and so forth. And whilst it did have several flaws, as a starting point, it was something that guaranteed many more freedoms than the current one we have now. On the final thing, I think Ayman will answer this when you ask about the legitimacy. I think you need to revise what legitimacy is. Mubarak was never elected. He had zero legitimacy.
Legitimacy with the broad definition.
You mean support, not legitimacy. Is that what you mean? He had much support.
A leader that was elected democratically. No.
Okay, therefore, yes. In which case, he had maybe some popular or.
And I'm sorry, just a sec, because he mentioned something wrong. He mentioned something completely wrong. The constitution of Al-Ikhwan had the military trial for civilians. One of the articles it had, and it refers to the law.
Right. That's Maha. I'm going to pass on to you, so we don't get lost.
Let me respond first to the issue of the constitution very briefly. Clearly, this constitution is giving the military even greater protection. It doesn't mean that the previous constitution was ideal, but this constitution is giving the military the right to appoint the defense minister for the next 2 presidential terms. It's ensuring that the military economic empire is protected, and it is ensuring that military trials continue. Some will say that the previous 2012 constitution also had its faults in not standing up to the military. There is an essential difference as well. What you're going to have is a parliament that is going to come about without those very members and that particular political force that would have questioned through parliament over time the power of the military. I assure you, unless you are an analyst from any other, I don't know from which universe, that the forthcoming parliament is not going to question the power of the military. Constitutions are important, but the reality of the political situation in Egypt means that you can have the most ideal constitution in terms of rights, but we are seeing those very rights being abused every day in Egypt. The history of the Arab world throughout the last 100 years and over is one in which the constitutions have upheld certain rights, but those rights are constantly being abused because you have dictatorship and a lack of democracy. So the emphasis on constitutions today, I think, is a moot point. On the issue of the security sector under President Morsi, I will say this to you, that if President Morsi had been in cahoots with the Ministry of Interior and the military, he would not have fallen. And I think that is the proof that ultimately what happened is that as President of Egypt, the elected President of Egypt, he put his arm out and tried to create some kind of consensus, some kind of understanding between all institutions, whether they be the judiciary or any of the other institutions. Many have pointed out to me that, oh, President Morsi used to visit various police officers and police stations and so on. Of course, as president, he was trying to win as much of these institutions over as possible. But ultimately, he failed. And he failed because these institutions were inherently corrupt. They remained corrupt. And the presidency itself was very anxious throughout its 1 year to launch into security sector reform. There were many attempts at trying to pursue security sector reform, but as anyone who knows, through even an institution such as Transparency International in this country, there was very little or no acceptance whatsoever from any institution of state in Egypt to self-reform itself. The response to that then should have been, from the beginning, perhaps from the presidency or from any other, to go down the revolutionary path, and ultimately from very early on to perhaps try to cleanse these institutions. But I would argue they were very entrenched, very corrupt, and they had the backing of the military. And whether it was Morsi, an Islamic president from an Islamist background, or a president, as someone said, from a socialist or liberal background, it didn't matter. Any reformist was going to face complete rejection of any form of reform. So I don't think there is any argument here that President Morsi supported the Ministry of Interior or its work.
Did he start any kind of reform? Did he have? Was there any?
Excuse me, sir, you've had a really good crack. Excuse me. No, I'm not going to take your... Nadia.
Was there any intention to reform?
No, I don't want to be giving you lots of space. Loads of people wanting to ask questions.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch me. It'll be fairly brief.
Excuse me.
I'm asking a question.
No, sorry.
You get your chance.
Okay.
No, let's all leave. I'm leaving. No, I'm leaving with him. No, I'm leaving with him. This is a stupid place to be in.
No, just a second. Just a second.
To be in and to discuss
Just a second.
عمار انا عايزه اجاوب على السؤال بتاعك، عايزني اجاوب ولا لا؟ طب يعني I want to answer his question. Okay.
He keeps talking. Can you ask him?
Can you please leave him?
Security, you're completely out of order. Can you get out of the room yourselves, please? I don't want you here. You're misbehaving. And we'd like this gentleman who's asked incredibly interesting questions to remain. Thank you very much.
Ammar, I'm going to try to make up for this, and if you allow me, I'm going to answer a bit on the Interior Ministry as well as your question that you directed to me.
Please do.
Okay, I would like to add to what Maha said, that I think Morsi was wrong when he said that the Interior Ministry is in the heart of the revolution, or whatever this sweet talk that he said. But the fact, I think this is sort of like, this is his reformist way, this is the MB reformist. He thought that, with time they could be reformed from inside, or like somehow like they're gonna have a conscience and they're gonna be good guys. But I think the truth of the matter is President Morsi and his government and his regime was unable to reform any institution in Egypt. It's not unwilling, it's unable. And still, he was wrong not to sort of say this early on, because I really think with how things were going, with almost all institutions against him, without having any kind of like power. Even if there was no 30th of June, I don't see how this could go on longer than that. You know, like you can't sort of pretend if you don't have arms or legs, you can't sort of pretend you're going to be a runner. You can't, you know, I really think he should have told the people the truth early on. He was trying at maybe the last 2 speeches, but this was too little, too late. He should have said that, and I think then maybe many others would have supported him. So this is my answer to the bit of the Interior Ministry. And just one thing, the Interior Minister, there was an interview after the coup. The current Interior Minister was saying that basically they were not obeying his orders, they were not telling him the truth. You know, like this is like public, it's a TV interview. I'm not like making things up. So he had no control over them, and they were very busy working to undermine and overthrow him. And there is a very interesting long article in Reuters about